Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, July 2nd, 2023. Coming at you live from Floored Media in Rockville Center. A little impromptu edition of Hockey Night in New York. Mr. Lou Lamoriello was a little active on July 1 in the NHL, so we figured why not fire it up, get a little show going. Stefan Rosner of the Hockey News and Islander correspondent for NHL.com is with me tonight. And also joining us, covering the Senators for the Hockey News, Mr. Steve Warne, and host of Sens Nation Hockey will be joining us to talk a little bit about a cat named Alex.
Yeah.
So we're going to bring him on later. That's going to be a lot of fun. My name is Sean Cuthbert. How we doing, Stefan?
We're doing great. You know,
You sure?
we're doing fantastic.
Yeah? Okay. How's your 4th of July weekend going so far?
It's been a long one. It's been a day, but it's been a long one. So, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, let's get to the hockey stuff.
So before we do jump in, I want to remind everybody we are proud to be presented by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, flagship location at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Also proud to be sponsored by Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. And, of course, Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. And, of course, happy to be here at Floored Media in Rockville Center. So Lou Lamoriello got active yesterday. We all know about the free agents. We talked about them last week. We said, who's he going to keep? When's he going to keep them? How long is he going to keep them for? And he said, hey, guys, why don't you stick around for a while?
Here's one dish with all of them.
Yeah, here's all your years right here. Somebody posted on Twitter that it all added up to like 26 years worth of contracts or something like that. But let's dive right into it, man. Let's start with these contracts that Lou gave out. Us being on Twitter, there's some groans, there's some moans, there's some people who liked it. So why don't we start with Mr. Scott Mayfield?
Yeah, Scott Mayfield's 30.
He is.
7-year deal, $3.5 million. And I people want to overreact to the years. And I think what you saw here was Scott wanted to stay. But he also, again, he's been on a bargain deal. What was it, $1.45 million the last 5 years?
Yeah.
Bargain deal.
Yeah.
That he probably went to the Islanders and said, listen, I will lower the AAV. You just got to give me the years. And you give him the 7 years, and I get it. First off, all these long-term contracts, by the last 2 or 3 years, they're not going to be great. But we talked about it before the show starts, and it'll be true for all of these. The cap is going to go up, and they're expecting it to go up exponentially.
Correct.
So a 3.5 annual cap hit for a guy like Scott Mayfield, who, yes, plays bottom pairing role, but not really. Again, he's top penalty killer. Mm-hmm. Big body, big playoff guy, has sneaky offense, set a career high in goals, assists this past year. Mm-hmm. So, again, he brings a lot more to the table than, which is like all these Islanders. They bring more to the table than just the stat line. And for that reason, Mayfield's such a huge part of this team going forward.
Yeah, look, I think the 7 years shocked all of us.
Yep.
It shocked me. I didn't see that coming. I wasn't even sure if they were going to keep him around. And I think we all kind of also speculated, like, is that where Lou's going to make a change? Is that where he might make an improvement, where he lets Scott Mayfield go and he brings in that puck mover we've all been talking about, right? But we also talked about last week saying, well, if you do that, then, where's that PK prowess coming from? Who's going to hop in the PK? Who's going to be, boxing guys out in front of the net? Who's going to have that big physical presence where it's something you still have to replace even if you bring somebody else in to move the puck? But interestingly, as we've seen, he keeps Mayfield around, and he kind of alluded to the fact that, hey, we still have a place on defense that we still might upgrade.
Yeah.
And he talked about that left spot on the third pairing.
He is telling everybody what he wants to do.
Yeah, like he was like, listen, there might be an opportunity to get a guy in there. He mentioned Zaho, he mentioned Balduke, but he made it very clear that he's not necessarily sold on those guys being that third pair lefty. And if you look at it, it's a little easier, at least in history has shown, that it might be a little easier to acquire a left shot D than it is a right shot D. Everybody talks about what a valuable commodity a right shot D is. So they keep Mayfield around, and, for everything that you just spoke for, I mean, look, he's 30 years old. Obviously, people are thinking about those 35 to 37 years of the contract, maybe sooner. And yeah, by then it's not going to look as great, but remind yourselves, it is just $3.5 million. You didn't get a $5, $6, $7 million deal here. $3.5 million for a guy who, as you said, kind of put his time in, had a bargain deal there. He wanted to stay. And you know, and you've noted in some of your pieces for the Hockey News, he can be guilty of maybe one icing too many here and there, maybe one penalty too many. 3. Right, and I've groaned about that too on Twitter as well. But I think for the total package that he brings to this team, I think he's a guy who, if you're able to keep him around for $3.5 million, as you were about to say before, Rachel said, if you go above that number, then maybe you say goodbye. They extend the years out to 7 years, and look, this isn't a contract that the Islanders are going to have difficulty getting out of if things go south in those later years. And you got to put all those other factors in too. The cap's going up by a bunch of years. By a bunch of dollars.
Supposed to
over the next few years. Yeah, it's supposed to go up pretty high over the next couple of years. Let's, barring any other, worldwide
world
catastrophe, right?
Yeah.
I think we can bank on that we're going to see some more millions there on the cap. Yep. So right away, that kind of gives you a little breathing room. And now you already have, a couple of your main core guys that are signed to long-term deals that you don't have to worry about adding money to in Matt Barzal, Bo Horvat, now Ilya Sorokin, right? So there's a lot of
Pulock,
there's
Mayfield.
a lot of, and those are all pretty team-friendly deals for those guys, at least with the defensemen. So when you factor all of that in, it doesn't look as bad. And again, if you get to that point where it's his 34-year season, his 35-year season, and he's starting to slow down, $3.5 million isn't tough to get rid of.
Again, it's not tough to get rid of now. And again, when the cap goes up, that's going to look like $1.5 million, $2 million deal.
And also, I mean, look, there's so many different avenues you can take, and not to spend too much time on the hypotheticals, but even that number of burying a guy's contract in the minors, that number goes up every year too. So now it's a little over $1 million. It might be closer to 1.5 by then too. Who knows? But the bottom line is, like, there's gonna be ways for Lou or whomever's the general manager by then to, maybe jump over a couple of hurdles to make that go away or make something else of it. But I just don't see any reason to cry that the sky is falling because Scott Mayfield got a 7-year deal at $3.5 million. Yeah, shocking. Didn't see it coming.
Yes.
Surprising, but that's what Lou had to do to keep him around. So I don't mind it so much. And again, now you don't have to worry about replacing all that stuff he brings to the table. And I think it's a little hopeful, I guess, in the sense that, Lou is thinking about finding another way to bring in a puck mover also. Whether he does or not, another question. We got a summer to find out if that happens. But I think all in all, you could do a lot worse at $3.5 million per year for Scott Mayfield at 30 years old. I
agree. And again, his first 4 years, no trade clause completely. After that, 16-team no trade list.
Okay, so you got half the league to choose from in 4 years or whatever it is, right? So we'll see. But look, I mean, they brought in Andy Green, right, towards the twilight of his career. They got, 2-3 good years out of him. Maybe that's what Mayfield becomes in those later years. And he's still, he's a veteran leader.
That's what it is. They have so many young, again, Romanov's young, Dobson's young. Aho's not young, but again, experience-wise, we'll count it as young. Bolduc's young. Keeping these veterans around, again, because Pelican, Pulock are probably going to play together. So if Bolduc is the only option, or if I was the only option, you want that veteran that's been there, done that, understands his role, rather than bringing in a new free agent. Now, then that new guy has to learn the Islanders system, and then you have a Romanov issue like you had this past year, where the first half you have a new guy and a youngster trying to figure things out. You can't have that happen. So I think having Mayfield back allows the Islanders to be so much safer with whatever they do on the left side, whether it's a young guy or a new guy coming in.
Look, and if you don't like the contract, you don't have to. But I just
Lou doesn't care.
Sure, but I just don't think it's as, again, sky is falling.
Yeah,
like what are the Islanders going to do with this contract sort of situation? You don't have to like it, but I don't think it's as crazy or as terrible as some fans are kind of making it out to be. So I'm okay with it.
Now let's get to the other 7-year deal.
Yeah, Pierre Engvall. So he comes in at $3 million per 7 years once again, and he just turned 27. So listen, you got him until his 33, 34 year, year on his age there. So he could theoretically still be a productive player by the time you get to 33, 34. We still have a lot to find out about this guy, right? Because he only came in towards the tail end after the trade deadline. He had a good playoff, and there's promise there. The concern is whether or not that's going to translate into something, long term over an 82 game season.
Yeah, the thing with me, I'm not saying that. Besides, they look alike. I'm not saying that Engvall is Nelson, but we know, again, when Trotz came here, he kind of unlocked something in Nelson. And while he's over 30, he's kind of in his prime right now, right? Or he's getting better. Who knows if he's actually hit his prime yet, right? For Engvall, his first couple years in the league, he was playing bottom 6 minutes on a really stacked offensive Toronto team.
Yeah, we've said this.
He comes to the Islanders. He's flourishing. Maybe now he starts to really figure it out in his career. And not I'm saying after 30 he's going to be, still growing, but maybe 29 to 30 are going to be the best years of his career. Because now he's getting the opportunity, the confidence, playing on a line with Nelson and Palmieri. If they clicked the way they clicked, that's why bringing him back was so instrumental. Doesn't matter why it worked. Matt Molson with John Tavares should never have worked. It worked. It flourished. Why? I don't know. It just worked out. So if they didn't bring Engvall back and that line didn't work, whoever that left winger were to be with Nelson and Palmieri, they'd be hitting themselves thinking, could have had this guy for this amount of money. Right. We didn't even try it. Now if they tried it and it doesn't work, you could always drop Engvall down, but it allows you for it.
He's a versatile piece as well.
He can play center also.
He can play all three positions. You're not necessarily going to keep the same lines, the same combinations throughout the full year anyway. So this is a guy who you can mix and match. He can play left. He can play right if they need to see something different. And if the forward group happens to be incomplete, as we continue the show to talk about how that might be the case. But listen, again, and he comes in at $3 million, which is actually a little less than I thought. I thought maybe he'd get closer to 3.5.
7 years,
right?
That's probably why.
Once again, it gets lowered on the AAV, so you can extend him out. But again, 7 years for a guy who's only going to be 33, 34 by the time it's done. That's kind of like right in the pocket there. He's not 30 years old like Scotty Mayfield, so I understand the concern with him being an older guy. But this is a guy who's getting afforded a chance to develop, as a more of an offensive contributor, which we've seen glimpses of already. Hopefully that pans out. And as we discussed on Twitter with some of the fans that were responding to some of the tweets, is that, look, right now he's slotted in to be a second liner. And if that works out with Nelson and with Palmieri, right off the bat, it's a bargain contract.
100%.
If he ends up being a 40-point player, with those guys, it's immediately a bargain.
Or if he just gets those guys to be...
That too.
If he, let's say he's not racking up the insane points, but his speed through transitioning is having, is creating offense, who cares?
Right. And then if it doesn't pan out and it turns out he's more of a, towards the bottom six and he ends up in a third line role, which could be possible too, then he's just getting paid appropriately.
Yeah,
it's not a problem. It's really a problem if he, really just tanks completely.
If he brings nothing and he stops skating because he has speed. At the end of the day, speed is such especially with the Islanders, such a valuable skill. It puts so much, again, if you're not racking up points, but you're coming through the zone and you're always a threat to do something, that opens up more ice for your line mates. And again, it just makes the defense pay attention. It was, bringing him back was so important.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. $3 million, again, by the time it could potentially become an issue, $3 million is not going to be difficult to move around, right? These aren't contracts that you're just locked into. I mean, look, the Islanders just dealt with contracts like that, and the Bailey contract, the Andrew Ladd contract, even Johnny Boychuk's ended up becoming an issue, things out of the Islanders' control and his control, and they find a way to sneak out of all of them. Now, granted, you don't want to be giving up second-round picks and all that to unload your contracts, your bad contracts, for sure, but these are on the lower end of things, $3.5 million. So
we even speak about Josh Bailey, but that was
right, we'll talk about that too, but we have to break to bring Steve in, but listen, we can pick it up more with Pierre as well, but let's get that break in. So, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers. We're going to take that break. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line Combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Miss the days of mixtapes and arcades? Love the taste of a bold IPA or maybe an ice-cold lager? There's a place where all of those magical things come together. Lost Farmer Brewing Company. At 63A East 2nd Street in the heart of Mineola, Lost Farmer combines a love of the 80s and a passion for quality beer to create brews that can only be described as gnarly, radical, and totally tubular. The retro vibe of the tasting bar will amp up your nostalgia while the blend of both local and exotic ingredients amp up your taste buds. beer not your thing? Crack open a can of cider or sip a Chardonnay on the extended patio. Order up from the snack menu. You can even bring your own. If you're more of a homebody, pick up a growler to go or order online at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And for all of Long Island's hockey fans, Lost Farmer created the delicious Stable Shaker American Lager to celebrate the newly built UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Whether you're at the stable for a hockey game, concert, or a comedy show, you can find Stable Shaker by can and draft around the arena. So raise a cup to the next cup with Lost Farmer Brewery, the future of Long Island craft beer.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The train rolls on here at Hockey Night in New York. And joining us on the line right now is Sens editor and reporter for the Hockey News, host of Sens Nation Hockey, and owner of CapitalPodcast.ca, Mr. Steve Warne. Steve, thanks so much for giving us some time tonight on such short notice. Really appreciate it. How you doing, man?
I am doing great. Great to be here, fellas. And let's talk some DeBrincat, I guess, tonight, huh?
Yes, absolutely. You're talking to Sean and Stefen.
Hey, Steve.
So why don't we start right away with just DeBrincat's situation currently with the Senators? What's going on between the team and the player? And then we can kind of branch off of where that's all going to lead.
Well, I think it's a case of this is a player that wants to be headed to UFA next summer. Probably something that the organization should have known this time last summer when they made the deal. But yeah, he is in a situation where his agents are saying, okay, the UFA and the open auction and all, the possibilities that go with that, that's what they're steering him toward. He's basically, as a lot of players are, completely hands off. He's deferring to his agents. And his deal, fellas, is and I've talked to a source that's close to the DeBrincat family, and they say that he absolutely loves this team and he loves his teammates and really likes DJ Smith. He just knows that this is probably his one shot at that big long-term contract. And I think you guys can agree that the best chance to get the best deal, best term, best money is in the open auction of unrestricted free agency. And that's where we are right now. The Sens are still trying to make deals, but right now it's a hard deal because he likes Ottawa, and he's been asked to come up with a list of teams' preferred destinations he might like to go to. But it's like he likes the team now, and now you're asking him to go to another team he might like. Whoever ends up getting DeBrincat and negotiating with him, they're going to be in the same boat that the Sens are right now. So that's how I see the situation right now, fellas.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to ask, because that's an interesting wrinkle to bring up, especially for all our viewers here right now that are wondering how this could relate to the Islanders if they happen to be able to work out a deal here. If he's so keen on going to UFA, is that just in relation to the Sens, or this might be a situation where whether it's the Islanders, the Ducks, or whomever it might be, are they going to be looking at the same issue where, hey, they might give up a lot to get this guy, but he might say to these teams, well, look, I'm going to UFA next year either way, so we're doing a one-year deal and that's it.
It's certainly my belief that no matter who acquires him, whether it's the Sens keeping him or whether it's a team like the Islanders bringing him in, they will have the same conundrum. They're going to have to figure out a way to make it worth his while to forego unrestricted free agency. And you guys can put your, get in his headspace and his people's space. Like, what are you going to do better in? If you're selling your house right now, are you going to get a better deal selling it with a market of one person, or in this case, one team, or is it going to be with a whole bunch of people, a big market? And that's what UFA is all about. He's not saying, okay, I do not want to sign. He's basically saying, okay, next year, UFA, let's rock with that. But if you want me to forego that and sign long-term with the Sens or the Islanders or whoever ends up acquiring him, you're going to have to make it worth his while.
Show me the
money. You're going to have to project to next summer. Yeah. Project to next summer. Think to yourself, what is DeBrincat going to be worth on the open market in the open auction of that? And then once you've got your head around the term and the money behind that, now you can start figuring out what he might want right now. And right now he has not been offered anything close to that, is my understanding.
So let's talk about DeBrincat as a player, Steve. We know he can score goals. He scored 40 goals twice. But what else does he bring on the ice where teams would say, listen, we're willing to give you whatever you want to sign you long-term, not just in the goal department?
Well, I mean, that's asking to set aside a pretty big factor of what Alex DeBrincat does. It's the very hardest skill there is, and that's scoring goals. but certainly a quality teammate. He got along well with everybody in the room, got great speed, got great vision. And one of the things, Stefen, that I was really impressed by, because he came with the calling card of he scores a lot of goals, 2-time 40-goal scorer at the age of 24. Wow. He was actually a better playmaker in Ottawa this year than he was a goal scorer, which surprised me. Sometimes you get a goal scorer and that's all they do, get the stick in the air, wait for the one-timer on the power play. And that, as an outsider watching some Chicago games, seeing the highlights, it looked like Patrick Kane was giving Alex DeBrincat a steady diet of one-time passes, and he'd bury them. No, he's a lot more than that. He is a playmaker as well. So a balanced player, and I think that just offensively speaking, whatever you need him to do, he can do. And on top of that, he's such a small forward. There's an assumption, I think, that, that guy might get racked up. No, you look at that guy's stats, his games played from the day he arrived in the NHL. He's one of the most resilient players in the NHL. So there's a few of DeBrincat's virtues.
So if the Senators do have to trade DeBrincat, what are they looking for in return? What is the ask? What does this team need right now?
Well, I think it's a case of, they need a bit of secondary scoring for one. They were really top heavy. And when you shut down Ottawa's top six, I would guarantee their record is abysmal, as they weren't getting that chip in. If you look at the bottom six forwards for the Ottawa Senators, there was not much going on there offensively. So you need to chip in with something there. Right now, I think they feel pretty set on defense, getting Jacob Chikrin last year. They got everybody healthy now, obviously, as everybody is. So I think that right now that would be the big factor, and probably some kind of recouping of the first and the second rounder that you gave up to get DeBrincat in the first place. I think it would be a tough sell to just go draft picks, because right now this team feels like its window for winning is just now starting to open, that they feel like they can maybe make the playoffs this year after missing 6 years in a row. So I would say a player that can probably, and I'd even go even a little higher, that can, the middle six type of a forward that will give you some secondary scoring, because you're going to lose DeBrincat in this deal, so that's going to be big. And then something in the way of probably a first-round draft pick. If you can pull that off right now, with everything, all the challenges we just talked about, the fact that you got to give up stuff and you maybe only have them for 1 year, that's I think as good as Pierre Dory on the GM here is going to do.
So yeah, the initial, or Andrew Gross of Newsday reported yesterday that what he was hearing was that, the Islanders were in talks, as other couple of teams were, but that Pajot, who again played for the Senators, was one of the pieces that would go back the other way. What have you heard maybe about that? And where does Pajot fit into it? I know you said secondary scoring. He hasn't scored as much, again, since that hand injury, but he still racks up assists. I think he had 40 points this year, career high 27 assists, and he won a career high 57% of his faceoffs.
I honestly think, as Lou Lamoriello said the day that he acquired him, that's the kind of guy that helps you win championships. That is a guy that, if you need him defensively, he's awesome. He's as good as it gets as far as penalty killing and defensive center. But, he can chip in offensively as well. He can play up and down the lineup. The Sens had a guy last year in Connor Brown, year before last, that served that role. And yeah, the Sens could use another guy like that. They hope that Shane Pinto is going to be that kind of center for them. They still got to get him signed this summer, and he's still got to take another step forward. He's just a rookie, just coming off his rookie season. But a guy like J.G. Pajot would come in very handy. And like I say, the sort of player that I was just talking about, a Pajot and a first rounder based on all the challenges that go on around DeBrincat, I think that could get it done potentially.
Okay, so there could be a fit there. So that's very interesting. So let me ask about the Sens' point of view. Is this something that they want to have dragging out over the summer? Are they looking to get this something done sooner than later, as far as, whatever process they have to go through with DeBrincat? I believe there's an arbitration case coming up, correct? And
correct.
And then beyond that, are they looking to unload this guy right away, or is this something they'll let kind of stretch out over the summer until they get the right deal?
Well, it actually gets even harder if you sign DeBrincat to his qualifying offer at this August arbitration date, because the CBA rules say that if you do a deal like that and it's the club elected arbitration, you can't sign an extension until January 1st. And so that makes it even harder. That's another challenge on top of things in terms of how hard it is for this team to trade him. So I think that if a trade is going to happen, fellas, I think it happens before the arbitration date. If the arbitration date comes and goes and they get it done, and there might be a 15% reduction. They say that, again, the rules say in the situation DeBrincat's in, it could be a 15% reduction in that qualifying offer. So it might be around $7.5 million, the qualifying offer. It could be as high as $9 million. If the Sens go to arbitration and it's settled, I think they're not trading him, because I think it becomes much more challenging to get a deal done. I think they probably hold on to him until the trade deadline and then see if they can find a true contender that's maybe willing to give up as much as they would right now.
So just to clarify, Steve, if they trade him before his arbitration hearing, he could sign for whatever he wants, or that's it, right? He could sign whatever he wants with the other team that acquires him? There's no...
Well, he'd still be under RFA rules, so they'd still have to figure things out that way. But yeah, I mean, at that stage of the game, if he's traded today, for example, they can immediately start negotiating on a long-term deal and get something done. But as I mentioned, right now, you would have to knock his agent's socks off to ask him to forego UFA next summer. And it's, I think Chicago knew this, fellas. When the deal went down, I think Chicago, as we all wondered, why are the Chicago Blackhawks giving up a 24-year-old with 240-goal seasons?
Right.
You know, it did. Yeah, even in the Chicago's starting a rebuild, I think no matter what stage of the rebuild you're in, start, middle, end, you can find a place for Alex DeBrincat to get something done long term. I think they knew that this day was coming, that this guy wanted to sample the UFA waters, and here we are.
Right, it's starting to come a little more into focus now, right? And just to be clear on this, Dorian is allowing teams to negotiate with DeBrincat while this is going on. Is that accurate?
Yeah, what's happening is they've asked him for 5 preferred destinations.
Okay.
So they can now go to those teams and try and negotiate a deal with them, because obviously if DeBrincat is happy in that market, he's more likely to go there and sign immediately, which makes him more valuable to the Ottawa Senators, right? So that's kind of how they're handling things. And at this stage, they're not having any luck because, like I say, he likes Ottawa just fine. And if he's not getting the deal that is worth foregoing UFA, he's not signing it. Not in Ottawa, not with Long Island, not with anybody.
Right, for sure. And before we let you go, Steve, maybe we can just key in a little bit on the Senators here. It must be a little exciting for fans now. They kind of had what looks to be the start of a resurgency last season, where they were in the mix for the playoff hunt. They obviously fell short, but they got a lot of young up-and-coming guys like Brady Tkachuk coming up here. Obviously, it might be a little disappointing to lose a guy like DeBrincat if it happens, but it looks like this team might finally be on the cusp of turning things around and entering the playoff mix. How's the buzz for Senators fans up there?
I think whether DeBrincat is here or not, I think that fans have an expectation level and an excitement level as well, because I think the expectation is, okay, they've missed the playoffs for 6 straight years. This rebuild has been going now for 4.5, 5 years. I think we can all agree that's as long as any fan base is willing to deal with a rebuild, and it's now time to start showing what you can do. And I think there's a lot to be excited about here. They hope that they've solved the goaltending situation with yesterday's Columbus, then LA, and he had a fantastic finish to the year with the Kings. But, it's asking 2 guys in Forsberg and Korpisalo to do something they haven't done. They're in their late 20s, and neither of them has been, for any period of meaningful time, a number 1 goalie in the NHL. So for the most part, you get 2 backups here who may be ready to pop as number 1 guys. That remains to be seen. I think they're happy with the defense right now. Again, with the Jake Sanderson is just going to be a stud in this league. That's a guy to watch moving forward here. And they got Jacob Chikrin from Arizona last year. So the defense is looking a lot better. And Josh Norris will be kind of a pseudo replacement for Alex DeBrincat in terms of secondary scoring. They're different positions, but he'll move up after missing most of the year last year with yet another shoulder injury. He is a guy that was, I think if he had played the year before every game, he would have been on pace for 42 goals. He's that kind of scorer. If he can stay healthy for 82, he's going to be a stud for the Sens as well. And of course, you got Stützle, Tkachuk, Claude Giroux is defying time completely, Drake Batherson. So there's a lot to like here. And the buzz is, I think there's an absolute expectation about making the playoffs and some real excitement about this franchise.
That's great stuff. And the last one I'll leave you with is, there's obviously been a lot of news with the ownership situation and whatnot. Is the checkbooks open now? Is this a team that's going to start, going to be, I haven't looked at their cap numbers, but is this a team that's going to be looking to spend to the cap and do as much as they can to make this a successful franchise going forward?
Well, I hope so. I mean, they haven't opened up the books to me, but if you're willing to cut a check for $900 million for an NHL franchise in Ottawa, chances are you've got financial backing. If you don't have it personally, chances are, and I'm sure the NHL is all over this stuff banking-wise, they're not giving a team out anymore. They've had some problems in the past. You know, I think even in your neck of the woods, with owners
we're very familiar with
that. They didn't have actually any money. So they're very careful about that these days.
Sure.
And I think the Michael Andlauer group is going to be really, really good for them. And and I guess the old adage is after 20 years of Eugene Melnyk, who always ran things with his own kind of budget, Michael Andlauer doesn't have a tough act to follow, I think.
Well, Steve, we can't thank you enough for coming on once again on such short notice. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your night, all right?
Right on. Thanks, guys. Anytime.
You got it. Thanks a lot. All right, folks. Steve Warne of the Hockey News. Great stuff from him. A little insight in Alex DeBrincat. We'll see if that name becomes more significant on Long Island or if, this is a bunch of speculation for nothing. We'll find out. We'll see.
Stay tuned.
But this is why we're sports fans, right? You know, we're talking about what may or may not happen. We had, as you mentioned, Andrew Gross bring his name up. It looks like there's something to it. You yourself followed up and said there's some fire where that smoke is. Yes. So maybe this is something the Islanders are looking into. Maybe it's something that can make happen. But the biggest takeaway from me from this is that whole UFA thing. If he's really a stickler to go to UFA next year and he doesn't care who he plays for, then you're not getting. First of all, you're not getting a team-friendly discount because A, he doesn't play for your team, but B, what's the incentive? You know, when he doesn't have any familiarity, he doesn't have any strong relationships with management, with the team, with the location, with the players. So I feel like if a team like the Islanders are going to want to acquire this guy first, they're going to want him for the long term.
Again, like we talk about with every trade, right? With Lou is not trading for someone, especially a guy that we're going to have to give up this much for him to, maybe I'll sign. Like you have to know, especially for a guy like this, where he's going to command a lot. You have to know that, okay, if we're bringing him here, like the Horvat situation, everyone goes, are they going to sign him long term? He signed before he even stepped on the ice, so Lou was well aware. Same thing with Engvall. Yeah. Just because they announced Engvall's signing yesterday, this could have been in the bag the moment he stepped foot here. And I wouldn't be shocked if it was.
Maybe it was. Maybe 2 days later.
Or maybe like after that Ducks game.
Maybe a week later.
After the Ducks game.
After the Ducks game,
that line went off.
Sure, maybe. No, that's a good point, but that's the thing, right? Yeah. Like the Islanders aren't making this deal unless they have a very good inkling that this guy's going to stick around.
And no team should.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, unless nobody's able to work anything. Because, look, he might just be like, that's not enough, that's not enough, that's not enough. So that's when Dorian might have to, basically make his ask a little lower to make sure he can just unload him to somebody, and get some kind of assets.
And not losing for nothing.
Right.
Again.
But then whomever that team is taking that risk, whatever they're giving up, where they have him play for a year, they hope he clicks, and then they hope that the guy is willing to stick around and they can sign him before the window opens because it just clearly this guy has no loyalties right now to where he's going to go. Right now the loyalty is to himself and his checkbook, which means whoever's bringing this guy in is going to have to pony up and probably end up having to make him the highest paid player on the Islanders or I can't speak for the other teams, but if he comes to Long Island, he's probably going to end up having to be the highest paid player on the team.
And again, you just talked about what he's good at. Again, I wanted to ask because we look at stats. Everybody loves to look at stats, goals. The guy seems to be doing everything. And for the Islanders, who again, other teams, maybe this is a guy that's not the superstar. Like for the Islanders to have a top line of DeBrincat, Horvat, Barzal locked up long term, 8 years each starting, right? Like I don't think we've ever had that.
No, it's been a long time.
But for the Islanders, though,
it's been a very long time. Probably Oposo, Vanek, and Tavares was probably your best top line over the last 20-something years.
No offense to those guys, that wouldn't compare to this. And again, for the Islanders to get a player like DeBrincat compared to another team, like this is the Islanders who need a guy like this. Like this is their final touch to win a cup. But if any team needed a player like DeBrincat and he was, let's say he's willing to sign long term and you had to give up a first round pick for it. I know everyone complains. You have to. If he's willing to sign long term, you can't even think about that pick because having those guys all locked up for 8 years would be so instrumental. One, to getting more free agents to sign here. Again, you had Horvat come here and sign long term, Engvall sign long term, Barzal. I mean, these guys now you're finally seeing people want to stay on Long Island when they get here.
Yes.
You just got to convince this guy before he gets here that he wants to be.
No, that narrative has certainly changed. And it's odd because I still see some fans every now and then saying, oh, the players don't want to play here. And it's like everything has gone against. Like the proof has been in the pudding now for a while. I mean, at least ever since Lou's taken over. I mean, he's retained like 95% of the guys that he's
Palmieri's another great example of, and the other thing too is
Pajot, Palmieri, like he brings in these Green, on a lower extent, right? But the bottom line is a lot of these guys that he's brought in, they see what the Islanders bring to the table, and again, on and off the ice, and they're like, this is a place where I want to be, and they want to stay.
And people say that Lou doesn't get big players via trade, which to me, again, I get the offseason not doing that. So Pajot was the top player available that free trade deadline. He was one of the top players. He got him. Palmieri, I know it wasn't a week like the biggest trade deadline thing, but Palmieri, what he had done, he was a top guy to get. Horvat was a top, like he does get those guys. It's just people, the Islanders and
he's definitely done look, he knows how to address a need.
Yeah.
And then it's a matter of whether he's actually able to pull off addressing it, right?
Yeah.
And he's said, look, like last summer, he's like, I wasn't able to get that puck mover that I wanted to get.
Yeah.
He got Romanov, but he wasn't able to get the puck mover. So, I mean, at least he's a little forthcoming about that. And he's like, look, this is what I need. I'm going to try. Didn't work out. Maybe it works out this time.
Yeah, we're not saying he's perfect at all. But again, what we talked about in the last week's episode is this past year, Lamoriello did. Maybe he wanted to go get another defenseman. No one knew that Romanov would get hurt. We talked about this. But he went out and got exactly what this team needed. And they got in the playoffs. And quite frankly, if Horvat plays a little bit better, maybe they're not taking 82 games. And again, Barzal gets hurt, and we don't know how that impacts the playoffs. But, Lou did everything that you would want a team trying to get into the playoffs and the pieces they needed to do. He did that.
Yeah, and just to reel it back to DeBrincat.
Yeah, that
I
guy,
mean, we yeah. I mean, look, we mentioned at the top of the show. I mean, the Islander fan base, without question, as far as this goes, like once bitten, twice shy when it comes to the Islanders being linked to a big name guy, right? Johnny Gaudreau, Nazem Kadri, Panarin. Like this is, you get a summer that comes, whether it's a guy for a trade or a free agency, the Islanders get linked to a guy, whether they were talking to him or not. And then the frenzy starts like, oh, this is a guy that they could use. This is the guy they want to get. And it hasn't panned out with those guys. So I get it. I get Islander fans being frustrated. We'd all like to wake up one morning and be like, hey, they got this guy and it's actually true.
And again, going back to Andrew's tweet, and again, people want to go, oh my God, they're not going to get him. It's no way. The reason I tweeted out after about
I don't fault guys for feeling that way.
No.
I don't fault fans for feeling that way.
Completely fine.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, which is why I said there was fire where there was smoke, is that I had later on in the night heard what I didn't talk to Andrew about
Smoke
it.
Heard,
whatever the expression. I don't know. Something's on fire.
Yeah.
I had heard what Andrew had heard later on in the night. So again, I of course trusted Andrew's stuff, but I want to say, listen, guys, like it's not just somebody throwing a name like, oh, DeBrincat and the Islanders makes sense.
Yeah.
It's the fact that there were multiple reports before Gross's tweet. I'm not saying my sources are connected more than theirs, but again, it's once I heard it myself, then you could say, okay, there's actually something to this. There's substance here. It's not just throwing a name.
A week ago, we mentioned a couple of names that maybe the Islanders can target, and we mentioned DeBrincat's name, and I think, if I remember right, we both kind of scoffed and laughed at it, like, they're not getting that guy.
Yeah.
So to come back a week later to be sitting here saying, oh, this is actually a possibility, and Pajot could actually be an asset that goes back the other way. Like now we know that on the Ottawa Senators end, this is a guy that they would welcome back. That there's a need there, right?
Major need,
So that means that this is a guy could be part of a deal. Because when we spoke about Pajot last week, it was more like he's a guy they might have to deal just to get, relief on the cap and then see what else they can work out to bring in a free agent. We were kind of looking at more from a free agent standpoint, right? Like clearing that money to sign a guy. Now it's like, oh, wow, Pajot could actually be the main guy who goes to bring the guy in that you want, right? Like DeBrincat, maybe he is. So,
and I did hear, but while you're on I actually forgot, but I did hear though too. Again, if Pajot is not moved in a deal for DeBrincat, right? I did hear that there are teams very interested in Pajot, that we could see Pajot dealt this summer. Again, we know how versatile he is.
Right.
Dealt this summer, not involving DeBrincat. So that's something to keep an eye on. Again, we've talked about how much he has value to this team. Again, even if he's not scoring the goals, like I said, he had a career high in assists, career high in the faceoff dot. He's got value. And again, when the cap goes up, like we're expecting it to, a guy like that, maybe he makes more than $5 million a year for what he does. So again, something to keep an eye on. If the Islanders want to go after other players and they need to clear cap space, there are teams that are interested in Pajot, like they were at the deadline.
For sure. So here's the game plan for the rest of the show. I'm going to tell you guys.
We do have to talk about Varlamov and Sorokin at some point.
We certainly do, and then that's why I'm laying this out, buddy. Thanks.
Sorry.
So I'm going to tell you all a little bit about Main Street Board Game Cafe. Then we're going to take a break. Then we're going to talk about the goaltenders who recently signed contracts. Then we're going to go into questions brewing. So, folks, if you haven't yet, get your questions in for the segment, but a little more on Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun, and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game for you, from old favorites to the hottest new releases. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens and unplug your game for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, or Game Night Live communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events. Located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd, unplug your game. So with that, we're going to take one more quick break. Thanks a lot for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. We'll be right back.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is Hockey Night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York. The best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Welcome back. We missed you too. Now kick up your feet and settle back in to Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching and or listening to Hockey Night in New York at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY or your favorite podcast provider. So as we teased before the break, we're going to start talking about the goaltenders of the New York Islanders. Let's try to keep it brief so we can get into questions brewing. From what we're hearing from Ed and Jay over there, we got a lot of questions, and we're doing a hard out right before 8 o'clock, so we want to make sure we address your questions. So Semyon Varlamov, another guy with a surprisingly long contract extension. He gets 4 years. It seemed like the 2-year mark was kind of embedded in all of our brains and in all the discussion leading up to it, and Lou kind of surprises us there. Also, maybe got $250,000 more than I thought he was going to get per year. Yep. I thought 2.5 was kind of going to be the max. 2.75, not terribly large. Listen, Lou went to great lengths on that great question that you asked him during his presser about the relationship that he has with Varlamov, and saying how important it was to have him stick around to kind of still be a mentor to Sorokin. He's got his buddy. You want to make one of the top goalies in the league as happy as you possibly can. So he's staying around a little longer than we thought at 4 years. We'll see if he gets to the end of that contract. He'll be 39 by the time that happens. What say you, Stefen?
Yeah, so people were saying, he's going to, I think Andrew asked, he's going to be 39. And Lou went into great detail about he had to look at Varlamov as the player, but like the way he goes about his business, pregame stuff, postgame stuff. He said that he's in better shape than some 26, 27-year-old players that he sees. And again, too, we don't know, but Sorokin and Varlamov are extremely close, as Lou said. Maybe, again, this is hypothetical, maybe Sorokin and his agent said, listen, like if we're going to sign an 8-year, you want us to sign an extension, we want Varlamov there for half of it with him. He wants, maybe that's the case, and that's why I got the extra 2 years. But I think keeping Sorokin happy is a perfect reason, but also Varlamov is the best backup in the league. If he's going to be a backup, he's the best backup in the league. And again, we know how strong Lou says it's always from the goaltending up. That's been the way he gone about business always. So I think having him here the extra 2 years, maybe a little higher AAV than people would have wanted. But again, if that's what it costs to keep Sorokin here long term, and he really trusts that this goaltending tandem is going to be legitimate, you have to do it. Again, people can complain all they want, but again, Varlamov is key. Again, you have 25 games if you're a backup to play. That's 50 points. You can't just have a guy that's not ready, an AHLer come in, or someone you don't trust come in, because those are games, again, if Sorokin's going to be playing his tail off left and right, making ridiculous saves, he's going to need a break sometimes. We saw how tired he was playing that final stretch.
Sure.
Again, so I think Varlamov really helps Sorokin a lot mentally, physically, and I think this is a tandem that clearly there was a lot of value in. And who knows if Varlamov's agent had other teams calling saying, listen, if you hit free agency, we're interested in what the price was going to be.
It was made pretty clear that he's a guy who would have gotten interest if he went
for sure.
free.
Starting salary money also.
But lucky for the Islanders, he made it very clear he wanted to stick around. He's happy, he's comfortable. So that's great. And look, the concern here is if, his age becomes a factor as the contract goes on. But again, having him at $2.75 million isn't crippling your franchise here. It's not handicapping you from perhaps making another decision. Like, there's a chance that he doesn't get to the 39 year on this contract, and they can bring in another guy. Who knows if Scarich is going to be a guy who's going to be able to come up and supplant him. We don't know yet if he's going to be good enough to be an NHL backup yet, but that's a possibility. There could be other guys that come up through the pipeline between now and the next 3 to 4 years.
Got to watch. Yeah.
Right. So, it doesn't mean just because he signed for the 4 years, he's absolutely going to be there, tied to the team for his 2.75. But I think in the short term, which is obviously the biggest concern now with where the cap is, it fits and it works and it makes the main guy happy, Ilya Sorokin.
That's all that matters at this point.
Who gets $8.25 million a year. I thought that was going to be $8.5, so he gets $250,000 less. It balances out. You got $11 million. You got $11 million between your two goalies now. And I think that you gotta love this contract for Sorokin.
Oh, you have to. If you're complaining about this, I don't know what to tell you. This guy is he's a third best goalie in the league, probably top 3. He's a Vezina finalist. We get what happened in the playoffs. Again, I think he was overworked, and sure, he has to clean up a little bit of things here, but
regardless of what it is, give the guy a chance to prove himself in the next playoffs. I don't think because he didn't perform as we all liked against the Carolina Hurricanes that means that's how he's going to be in the playoffs. We saw him against Pittsburgh the year prior, right? He has the ability to be good in the playoffs. He had a rough series against Carolina. Please proceed.
Yeah, you're talking about the top 3 goal in the league, Vezina finalist. This is a guy that we see the skill. He's elite. He's an elite player. Getting him for 8.25. He's staying for 8 years. Again, we didn't want this. No one wanted this to carry into the season because then tough decisions have to be made. And he didn't go and ask for Vasilevsky. Well, maybe he asked. We don't know what happened. But He's not getting Vasilevsky money. He's not setting the entire goalie market because I think, Hellebuck could get close to what he is. I think what's going to happen is Shesterkin next year. He's going to set the market completely because that's different. But I think with Sorokin, what he's shown, him just being here for 8 years, again, with the Barzals and the Horvats, while Sorokin's here, your window to win is open. It is wide open. Doesn't matter really what your team is. Yes, you need to have a good team in front of you, but the way Sorokin's able to play, it could be a difference maker in that series. Makes one more huge save. This team's in the second round.
He finished second in Vezina voting, and him and his agent did not hold the Islanders hostage.
Exactly.
They didn't play hardball with Lou. 8.25 is perfectly reasonable when you look at the other top goalies in the league. You look at what Hellebuck's looking for. You look at what Vasilevsky has. You look at what Bobrovsky has.
Yeah.
He came in for a very reasonable cost for what he's already shown with the Islanders, for getting second place voting for the Vezina. I think it's a great contract. He's still young enough where he's still going to probably be a good goaltender by the time he gets to the later years in that contract. So I think it's a huge win for the Islanders and their fans. And I think that pretty much we can close the book on the free agents so we can get into questions brewing. The only thing, you got Parise and Wahlstrom who haven't signed yet. We don't know if Parise will because we don't know if the guy wants to retire.
Yep.
Wahlstrom's an interesting name. Maybe he ends up in a trade that we're talking about here. Maybe he doesn't. But that remains to be seen. But Ed, Jay, how we doing back there?
We're doing beautiful.
It's time for
Questions
Beautiful. Brewing.
It's time for Questions
Brought
Brewing.
to you
It's time
by
for Questions
Brewing.
Well, Ed, why don't you take it away? How's the chat going tonight?
We're busybodies tonight.
Love that. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. I mean, we
appreciate it.
announced the show a few hours ago. We weren't even sure we were going to do it, and we were able to put it together. And big thanks to Jay here at Floored Media for letting us put it together here on such short notice.
Oh.
And
About
so,
as, pitiful of the thanks you can get, right? Because sometimes Jay can bug me back here. Did you guys know that?
Ed, I thought you were on our side.
Yeah, what is this? What is this?
Yeah,
Jay
so you guys have been fighting back there. What's
Jay's
going
going to
on
change
over
the locks.
Jay's been poking and prodding me all night.
Okay, well, good luck with that.
That's your problem.
Ed, what's happening on Questions, bro? What do we got here?
Well, we'll start off with Enzab tonight. Enzab 09. With the signings so far and injuries not devastating the team, where do you see the Isles finishing? Playoff spot? Cup contender? Mid-pack team?
I feel like, Stefen, if you don't mind me taking this one. I feel like they're a playoff team. I feel like they're a playoff team.
I agree.
because they dealt with a lot of injuries last year, as all teams do, but they found a way to get in there right at the end. But I think, you cross your fingers, hope they're a little healthier this year. And you just hope that whether it's bringing in another guy on the bench or the guys on the ice just figure it out, or the Islanders bring in somebody who's not with the team yet, that their power play is going to be just remotely better.
3% better.
Than what it
4%
was last year, right? So I think that they're still a playoff team, but, we just talked about the Ottawa Senators coming up. You're going to have teams like them, Buffalo, Detroit. They're not going to be pushovers. Columbus has, made a couple acquisitions too. They got Mike Babcock over there now. We'll see how he works out. So it's not going to be easy, but I still think that they're at the very least going to be fighting for a playoff spot. I still think they can make it, but I'm hanging on to that hope. Maybe it's false hope that there's still somebody else coming in, DeBrincat or not, that's going to help the squad, be a better team than they were last year.
And I think
drink that little copium. Is that what they call it?
Sure.
Drink a little copium.
Maybe a little
I agree.
too.
I'm drinking it too.
Yeah, so this is a perfect example for me to say this is you look at let's say they don't bring anyone else in, right? People that are saying, well, they're just running it back. I get that point of view, but you got to look deeper than that. You're getting a Horvat and Barzal healthy the entire year. You're getting an Engvall, Nelson, Palmieri the entire year. You're getting a Romanov who took steps, who was a different player in the second half, back healthy after shoulder surgery. He's going to be 100%. He's back for a full year understanding the system. Wallstrom's back a full year. Holmstrom has a year under his belt, which means he should be more comfortable. I mean, Dobson's confidence can't get much lower, so he should be more confident. Bolduc experience. Aho coming off the best year of his career. Like, you got to look at it that way. Again, that's taking the complete optimistic approach to this, but at the same time, those things matter. It's a mental game a lot, and having those guys back healthy, and even Pelech being back fully healthy, it's not just running it back. It should be a much better team. I don't know. Again, I'm not saying they're going to win a cup with this group, but it shouldn't take 82 games to get in. This should be a team that's significantly better and much more consistent, should be, than they were this past year.
We shall see. Ed, what do you got for us next? Thanks for the questions.
Yes, thank you all for the questions. And if you still have some, try to get them in now. We'll see how many we get through. On Dremy 13, do you see Lou going after Nylander if he can't get DeBrincat?
I mean, he wants money. Money's the biggest thing.
He likes that.
A lot of teams are going to want him. And the biggest thing, too, is when we just talked with DeBrincat, is you bring a guy over, you got to pay him, and you got to sign him long term. We don't know what Nylander wants, but yes, it seemed like he's going to leave Toronto. Certainly, Lou should take a flyer. He's a filthy player.
In a good way.
In a good way. So, I think there should be interest there for sure. Him on a line with Barzal and Horvat. I don't know if he's probably more of a pure, I don't want to say more of a pure goal scorer than DeBrincat, but I think he's more of a one-dimensional type of guy. Like, you just learn about how much DeBrincat could do, saying he's a playmaker. You're bringing in Nylander to score goals, big goals. So definitely someone that should be of interest.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Also a good name to be a Nylander and Wydlander. CGS 878 says, who's coming up from the bridge when there's an injury or three?
I don't know. Hopefully you do. I mean, you have Wotherspoon just signed with Boston.
Wotherspoon's signed with Boston, but in terms of development camp, which the Islanders don't have, we don't have a date, but it's going to be a week before training camp. Okay? So the names to watch in case of injury. One, Durando, who played last year. DeFore, I think, would have to really do extremely well in Bridgeport because he was called up prematurely. We know that one. He's going to have to truly earn a chance there. Matthew Maggio, I'm very high on. I have a good relationship with him, but he's a very good player. He's coming off a OHL Player of the Year team. Sorry, guys. OHL Player of the Year.
Amateur hour,
Hey, it could be a source.
Amateur hour.
Be a source. No, I'm kidding. OHL Player of the Year, I'd watch him for maybe a number 2 or number 3 call-up. Ishikov didn't get a chance last year, and he was an all-star in the AHL. So I think those 3 guys, Durando, Ishikov, and Maggio, are 3 players to watch.
Next up from Ahans. If this hasn't been asked or answered already, what team do you believe DeBrincat will be on come opening night?
Oh, Anaheim. No, I'm kidding. We jumped the gun. No, wait. I don't know.
Where's your crystal ball, bud?
No, I think Anaheim messed up their draft. So if anyone could use one of those guys to fit their Zegras and their McTavishes and that ultra skill up front. Like we also heard that Anaheim's one of the teams that's interested, so I didn't just pull that out of left field.
Sure.
But I think he'd be a great fit there. I do think he'd be a great fit on Long Island as well. But again, Anaheim, Anaheim with that group, that'd be incredibly fun to watch.
And to be fair, the Ducks have to have an enormous amount more assets to play with here than the Islanders do, right? Whether it's draft picks, whether it's young players, but maybe to a team like the Islanders' advantage, they want a veteran guy like a JG Pageau because they finally want to compete. So we'll see. But the Ducks, sure. All right. No idea.
Next up from Mike4652 Co. With all these signings and little money left with Ollie left to sign, sure looks like Parise is not coming back. Thoughts?
Well, Lou made it perfectly clear. I don't know how you do it, but he said that there's always a spot for Zach. So I think what would happen with that is someone goes in the minors, Zach will sign a league minimum. They'll figure that out. I don't think that's going to impact it at all.
I think that even means as a 13th forward, too, when he always has a spot. Like, I'm just saying, like, let's say Zach gets outplayed. He signs, he gets outplayed in camp.
Which I doubt, but yeah.
I'm not saying
No, I'm saying if anyone's going to get outplayed.
But he's the guy who, you talk about locker room guys, like we always talk about Johnston, right? Who everybody wants to get rid of. But, I think Parise would still have a spot on the team, even if he wasn't a regular 12 guy anymore. Ed?
For sure.
Rectify Gaming asks, what do you think the Islanders will do to improve the power play for next season?
I think if they score more goals, that might help the power play.
But to take the question more seriously, though, like the great thing is the slate is clean. Like any number of things.
Yeah.
Any number of things, whether that's bringing a new assistant, which I do think they're going to do. I don't think they're going to stick with John McClain. This is a hunch.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I haven't heard anything. But I think, because we discussed this before, I think they're going to let Lane bring in a guy he wants to bring in. Not to say he has anything against McClain, but he obviously didn't pick him. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like a Lou was like, hey, I got this guy over here who can do it.
He's done the job
at the last minute, right? I think they're going to bring somebody in, and let's face it, right? It's not like John McClain did anything to earn himself another year, right? After the way the power play went. Not to say that it's all on him. But I say it starts with bringing in another assistant and maybe changing the strategy up a little bit.
Yeah, I think they had success late in the year when the Aho shot the puck from distance and you had bodies in front. I think they were trying to do too much passing and trying to find that perfect goal, and they were whiffing on one-timers. You have big bodies. You have Anders Lee. I know his hands might not be the same. Get the puck to the front of the net. But again, we've kept asking Lou at the draft, everything, have you made a decision on your coaching staff? And he says, not yet. To me, if he was done deal, he would just say everyone's back, and that would be that. So the fact that he hasn't been committed to 100% saying that makes me believe that someone's not coming back, and we know Lane's coming back at this point. So
yes, we do know that. What do you got, Ed?
Jay Bergs actually asked a question about regarding DeBrincat, just in case he missed the interview or anything like that. He just wants to be kept up on the news. He hasn't seen anything. So any news yesterday regarding the Isles and DeBrincat. So
we know there's interest. We know there's talks. Mm-hmm. As of today, it's been pretty quiet. We just talked to Steve about there's obviously a major thing that has to happen here. So that's why I think teams are skeptical. But right now, nothing brand new to report other than that the Islanders are actively interested. It's not just throwing a name out there.
Well said.
Thank you.
Trottier 19. Same roster will bring same results. They need another addition of talent and speed. Do you agree or disagree?
I think at the end of the day, we agree that they could use more.
But again, we just spoke
go on a rant about how he expects them to be better, even if they did bring the same players back. And, you hope that that's the case. But I think we all also agree that it's probably not enough to win a Stanley Cup.
No,
they need more pieces. So, yeah, I think we're with you on that.
And there's a postscript to this, which he added on later. He said, I don't buy Stefen's answer. Injuries are always going to happen. So if Pelech is healthy this season, then it's likely someone else will get hurt.
No, of course.
In addition to my questions, apparently.
Just based on Stefen, there's no way you're getting this answer right.
Yeah, of course there are probably going to be injuries. But let's say 4 out of the 5 scenarios that I said actually happen, and they don't deal with, the amount of head injuries they dealt with this past year, the odds that happen again are very slim. That's the same. Then again, I guess the chance of having a concussion the second time is probably higher when you already had one.
That is a statistic, yes.
So, okay, maybe I'm completely wrong. But I think the whole point of what I was trying to say was that even if they don't make changes and these guys come back, it's not the same exact team.
Okay.
So, yes.
Next up from Monkey Man 4647.
Monkey Man, okay.
Monkey Man. First time chat. Thanks for joining.
All right.
Realistically, how does Lou create the cap space to sign DeBrincat?
I think that's probably one of the bigger questions with regards to this situation, right? You can talk about who he's going to include in the deal, who's going to go the other way. Of course, But it doesn't mean Ottawa's going to want all those guys where the salary is going to go, right? Like, they may have to make the deal, whatever Ottawa's satisfied with, and then make other decisions, right?
Yeah.
With some other players on the roster, and, take your pick, right? You can name, if you go higher, Kyle Palmieri, is that a contract you're going to be looking to unload? I don't know if they're going to need to unload a contract of his caliber to make it happen.
Yeah.
And then you go on down the list where you have your Cal Clutterbucks, you have your Matt
Wade
Martins,
Johnson and save 1.1.
your Ross Johnstons, and you can chip away at it. Simon Holmstrom's a guy who you can get yourself, $865,000 if you want to send him back to Bridgeport if they do have a full forward roster, right? I mean, I don't know if we have a very definitive answer here on the show right here off the top of our heads, but listen, the fact of the matter is, if Lou is actually seriously in the mix to potentially make this happen, it means that he's already got ideas percolating to free that salary up, because he knows what it's going to take to not only trade for him, but he knows what it's going to take to sign the guy, right?
You ever watch an episode of Criminal Minds where they have all the pins with all the ropes connecting?
Sure.
If Lou wants him, that's already set up.
I always think of that,
right.
That Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode
Yes.
with Charlie in the basement.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the mailroom. Next up from Josh Elkin. Would there be a second trade after DeBrincat to shave some salary?
Next one.
Palmieri, but potentially Palmieri.
I mean, anything's possible.
I think anything's on the table. So. I think in order to get a guy like DeBrincat, anything's on the table. We got to take one more because unfortunately we do have to fly out of here. So if you got a quick one.
If DeBrincat doesn't come, any fallback options you guys can think of?
Adam Henrique, I think, would be a great option. Had a really good year last year. He got hurt around the deadline, which is why the Ducks, I don't think, moved him. I know he's a great leader, and that obviously fits the Islanders' mold. He's a center, and he could play the wing. So I think that's another guy. He's not going to cost nearly close to what DeBrincat got, but he could score goals. And again, I think, he might be a downgrade, but certainly any type of scoring forward will help this team.
Yeah, for sure. And you have options like Matt Duchene and off the table. He's a guy I would have liked the Islanders to look at, but he's off the table. So, look, I mean, it'd be very exciting if they pick up a guy like DeBrincat. Hopefully Lou has some backup plans. Lou being Lou, I'm sure he has a plan B or plan C. Whether we all like him or not remains to be seen. But with that, we got to end Questions Brewing, and we got to end the show. So, folks, if we didn't get to your questions, we apologize. Hopefully we can answer next time in the show. Or, of course, you can hit Stefen or I on Twitter, and we can talk about it then. So thanks so much for all the questions. So with that, we're going to wrap up here with a huge thanks to Steve Warne for joining us here, talking about DeBrincat and the Ottawa Senators. Big thanks to our sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Check them out at BlueLineDeli.com. Also, a big thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. Check them out at LostFarmerBrewing.com. And, of course, a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Check them out at MainSTBoardGameCafe.com. And a huge thanks to Floored Media here in Rockville Center for hosting this wonderful show in this wonderful studio. Check them out at FlooredMedia.com. And remember, folks, to rate, review, and subscribe. If you're first time to the show here, we really appreciate you hanging out with us. Make sure you subscribe to Twitch, subscribe to YouTube, follow us on social media. Speaking of, Stefen, where can we find you on Twitter?
Got me on Twitter at Stefen_Rosner, STEFEN_Rosner. I'm at the Hockey News Islanders site and NHL.com.
Look at you. Look at that resume you're building over there. You can follow myself at Shawnee Hockey. You can follow the show at Hockey Night NY. So with that, for Jay, for Ed, for Stefen, for myself, Sean Cuthbert, we've been Hockey Night in New York. Have a great rest of your night. We'll see you next time.